Nobody teaches you the truth about money. I studied at an economics faculty for 6 years and still didn't understand it. 9 years ago, I started reading every serious finance and money book I could find and summarizing them on YouTube. What I found contradicted almost everything I was taught. So one day, I went back to the professor I trusted most and asked him if what I was discovering was true. He looked at me and said, "Yes, all of it." He knew, but the textbook said otherwise. That's when I understood. The confusion isn't an accident. This video is the entire map of money. Everything those 15 years taught me, condensed into one place. Let's start from zero. In 1903, an American doctor named William Furness travels to a tiny island called Yap, a small piece of land in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that most people have never heard of. And he is confused by what he sees. The people of Yap use enormous stone discs as money. Some of them are 4 tons of solid limestone, the weight of an elephant. You cannot carry them, you cannot move them. They just sit there, in the village, by the road, outside someone's house. And here's the thing, they never move. Ever. When someone buys something, ownership transfers. But the stone stays exactly where it is. Everyone in the village simply agrees that stone now belongs to this family. But the story doesn't end there. Years ago, one family was transporting a particularly large stone by canoe. A storm came, and the stone sank to the bottom of the ocean. Nobody can take it out. Nobody can even see it. It still kept circulating as money. The entire island agreed that stone exists and it belongs to this family, so they can spend it. The stone was never the point. The agreement was. 2 of the greatest economists in history, Keynes and Milton Friedman, disagreed on almost everything. These 2 guys argued about economics their entire lives. Both of them independently read about Yap Island, and both of them said the exact same thing. These people understand money better than we do. So if money is just an agreement, where did that agreement come from? How did it start? You've probably heard the barter story. First, humans bartered. You give me your fish, I give you my bread. Then it got complicated, so we invented money. That story is not true. In 1776, economist Adam Smith wrote it down in his book. He wasn't describing history, he was making a logical argument. But for 250 years, economists treated it as a fact. Teachers taught it, textbooks printed it. Nobody checked if it was actually true. When anthropologists finally checked, they found nothing. Cambridge anthropologist Caroline Humphrey spent her career looking for it. Her conclusion was simple. No example of a barter economy has ever been described. Not in any culture, not in any era, not on this planet. All evidence suggests there never has been such a thing. And here's the part that flips everything upside down. Barter didn't come before money. It came after. People only bartered when their money system collapsed and they had nothing else. Russia in the 1990s, Argentina in 2002. When the currency disappeared, people went back to swapping things directly. It wasn't the beginning of money. It was the emergency backup when money was gone. What actually came first was much simpler. You helped your neighbor build his roof. He helped you with your harvest later. No transactions, no haggling, just people remembering what they owed each other. The oldest writing ever discovered isn't love stories. It isn't prayers. It isn't laws. It's a debt record from over 5,000 years ago, found in Mesopotamia. what is today Iraq. Someone borrowed tools and promised to pay back after harvest. Merchants writing down what people owed them. All of it scratched into clay tablets that you can actually go and see in museums today. No coins, just promises recorded in clay. The first coins showed up 2,700 years later in Lydia, what is called Turkey. Think about that. For over 2,000 years, humans built cities, paid workers, ran entire civilizations on nothing but recorded promises. The coin came after, the promise came first. So let's put this all together. Yap Island, ancient Mesopotamia, two completely different places, two completely different times, same discovery. The value was never in the object. It was always in the agreement about the object. Money was supposed to work like a measuring tool, like a ruler. A ruler only works because everyone agrees on a measurement. Think about a minute. A minute is 60 seconds, whether you're in Tokyo, New York, or Cairo. Always. Nobody can change that. Nobody wakes up one morning and says, okay, today a minute is 55 seconds. That stability is exactly what makes it useful. You can plan around it, trust in it completely. Money was supposed to work exactly the same way. A stable, reliable measure of value. But here's the difference. A minute exists in nature. Nobody controls it. Money is a human agreement, and human agreements can be changed silently, without telling you. That's exactly why for thousands of years people tied money to something physical. Gold, silver, metal, something nobody could fake. Something that behaved more like a minute, fixed and impossible to print. That physical anchor kept everyone honest. Then some guy came along and said, forget the gold, just use paper. And the whole world said, yes. You are now trusting a measuring tool held by the same person who benefits from making it shorter. And here's what I couldn't stop thinking about. How are people so naive? How did nobody just say no to paper money? But then I actually looked at how it happened, and I realized I would have said yes too. So would you. It turns out that you don't have to convince people to trust something you can print. China, about 1,000 years ago, during the Song Dynasty in a region called Sichuan, they had a strange problem with money. Their money was made of iron, heavy, low value, and you needed a lot of it just to buy anything important. Carrying enough iron to make a serious trade meant carrying kilos of metal through the vast empire. It was slow, dangerous, and exhausting. So ordinary merchants came up with something smarter. Leave your iron with the trusted local shop. Get a receipt. Trade the receipt instead of the metal. Lighter, faster, nobody gets robbed on the road. Nobody invented this from above, just regular people solving an annoying problem in the most obvious way available. And it worked. Genuinely worked. Trade got easier. People's lives got better. Then the government noticed. They stepped in and made it official, creating government-issued paper money called jiaozi, which looked something like this. This was not a bad idea either. Instead of hundreds of different shop receipts, you had one. The problem came later. War is expensive. And printing paper is cheaper than finding silver. So they printed a bit more. Then a bit more. Then more again. The ruler was shrinking. And once people noticed, they stopped trusting the measurement entirely. They went back to the heavy iron coins they spent generations trying to escape. The Chinese were the first to invent paper money. and the first to be destroyed by it. London, 17th century. Same pattern, different place. Imagine you live in this time. You have gold, but the streets are dangerous. Thieves are everywhere. Wars, fires. Keeping it at home means risking everything you own. So you leave it with the local goldsmith. He already built vaults for his jewelry business. For a small fee, he agrees to store your gold too and hands you a receipt, a piece of paper saying exactly how much gold he is keeping safe for you. And here's the thing. Almost everyone in town used the same goldsmith. So when you bought something from your neighbor, he had gold stored there too. Instead of you walking across town to collect your gold, walking back to hand it to him, and him walking across town to deposit it again, you just handed him the receipt. He could walk in any time and collect the gold himself. Same result, 10 times easier. Why would anyone do it any other way? One night, the goldsmith is lying awake in his bed, and a thought creeps in. All that gold is just sitting there doing nothing. On any given day, maybe 10% of people actually come to collect it. The rest just trade the paper receipts. So what if I lend some of it out, charge interest? Nobody would ever know. So he starts lending it out. A merchant needs money to start a business. The goldsmith hands him a receipt and charges interest when he pays it back. But whose gold is he lending? Yours. And you get nothing from that earned interest. You don't even know your gold is out there making money for someone else. You think it's safely sitting in a vault. The goldsmith collects the interest. You carry the risk. He keeps the reward. It's like you park your car in a garage for safekeeping, and the owner secretly rents it out, making money from your car every day. Well, you think it's just sitting there, safe. Now, the lending itself was actually useful. Idle gold builds nothing. Put to work and it creates jobs, builds things that wouldn't exist otherwise. That part was a real discovery. But then the goldsmith gets greedy and prints more paper receipts. He has, let's say, 100 pieces of gold, but he prints 150 receipts. The extra 50 have nothing behind them. He just made them up. A real receipt and a fake one looked identical. There was no difference, so nobody could notice. Soon prices start rising. Nobody knows why. When everything was finally exposed, you might expect outrage, reform. Instead, they made it official. King William III was desperate for money to fund his wars. Nobody would lend to him, so he looked at what the goldsmiths had been doing and thought, I want that same power. In 1694, they founded the Bank of England. A group of merchants loaned the crown £1.2 million. In return, the king gave them an official license to issue paper money, backed not by gold in a vault, but by the king's promise to repay. The goldsmith created money from nothing and called it a receipt. The Bank of England created money from nothing and called it a banknote. Different name, same trick. The fraud didn't get shut down, it got a crown on top of it. The ruler was now in the hands of the people who benefited from shrinking it. And the rest of the countries didn't just watch. They copied it, almost every single one of them. That is why they call the Bank of England the mother of all central banks. Every central bank, every bank you have ever walked into, all running on the same system the goldsmith invented, lying awake in his bed. But the world wasn't ready to give up on honest money. 1944, the war was almost over, and before the smoke even cleared, the entire Western world sat down and agreed on one rule. Let us tie every currency to the dollar and tie the dollar to gold. Fixed $35 for 1 ounce. And for a while it worked. Europe rebuilt from rubble. People lived better than they ever had. But underneath it all, a quiet problem was growing. America was spending heavily on wars, on programs at home, and quietly, it started printing to cover the gap. The dollars were piling up. The gold wasn't. And other countries started asking one very simple question. If we all showed up at once, would the gold actually be there? The answer was no. Countries slowly started showing up. France was the first to demand their gold. The vault was emptying fast. The U.S. President Nixon didn't wait for it to run out. On a Sunday evening in August 1971, he went on television and announced that the dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. The last anchor was gone. Overnight, every currency in the world became just paper, backed by nothing but trust. Think about what that meant for anyone sitting at home watching that broadcast. If you had $100 in your pocket that night, today, the same $100 would buy you only $8 worth of things. Sit with that for a second. 92% of the value was gone, while the number on the note stayed exactly the same. That was 1971, half a century ago. You would think in 50 years someone would have fixed this, built something better. Nobody did. In fact, the situation got even stranger. Remember the goldsmith printing receipts he had no gold for? Private banks are still doing the exact same thing, just on a computer screen now. 97% of all money today is digital, and it is created by them, not the central bank, not the government. Most people think that banks are just the middlemen. They take deposits, keep 10% as reserve, and lend the rest out, and that is how they make money. This is also what I learned in my economics classes. That is not what happens, not even close. Imagine you walk into your local bank. You need $10,000. You sign a loan contract. At that exact moment, two things happen. The bank records your promise to repay as an asset on their books and types $10,000 into your account. In that exact moment, money is created. Your signature is what created that money. Now you can spend it. Do whatever you want with it, as long as you pay back the $10,000 plus the interest. They didn't use their savings or use somebody else's deposits to give you that loan. They just typed numbers on a screen, but they still collect real interest on it. But wait, it gets even stranger than that. You borrowed $10,000, but with interest, let's say you owe $11,000 back. That extra $1,000, where does it come from? It was never created. It doesn't exist in the system. The only way you can get it is if someone else borrows it first. But that someone owes back more than they borrowed too. So another person has to borrow, and another, and another. The only way anyone can ever pay back their debt is if someone else is constantly taking on new debt. Forever. The system doesn't just prefer this, it requires it. So more and more money keeps getting created, but the amount of goods and services in the world doesn't grow at the same pace. So each dollar you own buys a little less than it did yesterday. And here's the part that took me a long time to accept. That is not an accident. Someone decided this. Every major central bank in the world targets 2% inflation per year. They call it price stability. 2% sounds harmless, but compound it over a lifetime and it cuts the value of your savings roughly in half every 35 years. The ruler is being shortened on purpose every single year. Now, here's the question. If someone decided this, who did they decide it for? Borrowers. Inflation is good for borrowers. You borrow a strong currency. You pay back with a weaker one. So the debt quietly shrinks. Now, think about who the biggest borrower on earth is. Governments. Every single one of them. Debt so large it could never realistically be paid back, but inflated away quietly over decades. And suddenly, it becomes manageable. The saver pays, the borrower benefits. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system.